So,
All
um,
right. Well, we will reintroduce, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Charles Fulforth for part two of the HAVA correspondence.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. This presentation is the second part of a larger effort to understand the HAVA correspondence as a corridor rather than a single isolated showpiece. My focus today is on Marseille-bound Levant Mail between 1864 and 1872, and especially the way one surviving stream lets us watch Ottoman fiscal paper, Arabic mercantile writing, and French Levant postal handling move together across the frontier. The object that anchors the talk is what I call Aleppo 1870, and that's at the right of the screen. My claim is not merely that it is attractive or unusual. My claim is that it preserves two active administrative identities at once. It begins life inside an Ottoman legal fiscal framework, and it is then accepted and transmitted through the French Levant postal system without the earlier identity being erased. Everything in the deck is built to test that proposition carefully rather than romantically. So, this is the narrative shift. What changed since the earlier version of this work is shown on this slide? First, the January 2026 French Colonies Philatelic Society article gave the dual citizenship idea a firmer public frame. Second, newly surfaced HAVA 10 appears to stand apart from comparative cover A and now places Joseph HAVA at Aleppo and Michael HAVA, his brother-in-law, at Marseille on the same 12th of May, 1864 corridor witness. Third, the opening of the corridor is now denser than before. We could see Aleppo to Alexandria to Marseille operating earlier and more visibly. So the deck no longer reads as a single rarity claim built around one wrapper. It now reads as a family commercial network active across overlapping imperial systems, with Aleppo 1870 still serving as the keystone object. In other words, HAVA 10 makes the story larger, but it does not dethrone the centerpiece. Here's the chronology, the spine, right? The corridor now opens more clearly. It opens in 1864 instead of feeling as though it begins later or only culminates in 1870. Comparative cover A and HAVA 10 together make Marseille visible at the opening of the sequence. Then the route thickens. The 1866 Alexandria Edda addendum, the 1868 Constantinople item, the multiple 1869 witnesses from Marcina and Aleppo, and the 1870 Keystone Wrapper, and finally the 1872 Alexandrietta cover. This matters because chronology is not just a list of dates. It tells us whether Aleppo 1870 is an orphan or a participant. What I want you to see is that the wrapper is not standing alone in empty space. It belongs to a living corridor, and Habit 10 now makes that corridor open more clearly and earlier than before. Here is the corpus, the witness is. Across the top are the five covers held in the collection, my collection. Across the bottom are the outside witnesses that the members throughout the Philatelic Society have sent over to help populate. I keep these categories separate on purpose because I do not want the census inflated by ownership claims or by temptation to blur what is in hand with what is only observed in the market, in publication, or in other holdings. But although the categories stay separate, the history is one history. The owned corpus, the outside witnesses all point into the same Marseille bound network. That is important distinction of this deck: conservative handling of evidence, but a willingness to tell the larger story once the pieces generally support it. HAVA 10, the new witness that was sent from our last presentation, right, from one of the members. On this 12 May 1864 cover, we can now see Joseph HAVA at Aleppo and Mikhail HAVA at Marseille on the same surviving piece. The blue oval hand stamp makes Aleppo sender side explicit. The endorsement via Alexandria, together with the Russian office style blue handling and French Alexandria franking and cancellation, turns Alexandria from a theoretical routing guess into a visible transfer node. For me, the importance of HAVA 10 is threefold. It gives the corridor earlier depth. It strengthens the family commercial reading by tying named HAVA participants to the same route. And it does all of that without displacing Aleppo 1870 as the keystone. HAVA 10 is not the masterpiece. It is the witness that helps us understand the masterpiece more historically and more securely. This external witness from Alexandrietta shows the corridor wearing two administrative faces at once. What you see here is not the same claim as Aleppo 1870, but it is an important neighboring phenomenon. The dispatch face is visibly French and Ottoman at the same time. That makes Alexandrietta look less like a simple export point and more like a port environment in which layered administrative signals can coexist. Why do I include it? Because it helps bridge the cleaner, more obviously French-looking covers and the much more complex frontier logic of Aleppo 1870. It shows that mixed administrative appearance is not a fantasy imposed on the material after the fact. The region itself could produce this kind of layered physical language. Ah, this one's awesome. This witness matters because the corridor is Levantine voice. Marseille remains the endpoint, but Arabic commercial writing is not marginal here. It is foregrounded. That means Hava Stream is multilingual, not just in geography, but in appearance. The correspondence is not merely passing through the Ottoman world on its way to France. It is visibly written from within that world. That point becomes important later, because when I argue that Aleppo 1870 belongs to a merchant stream rather than to an isolated curiosity cabinet, I need these witnesses to show the Arabic mercantile texture is normal within the corridor, not exceptional. So, do these outside witnesses actually do for the argument? They make the opening earlier because 1864 is now more depth than before. They make the map wider because Alexandria becomes an explicit transfer node rather than a background assumption. And they make the Hava corridor richer because Joseph Hava, Mikhail Hava, and multilingual merchant practice all become more visible in one early witness cluster. I want to stress the discipline here. These covers remain outside the collection, but they are inside the history. They do not pad owned corpus. They enlarge the corridor. Now we turn to the keystone object. This wrapper, to my eye, is where empires trade in the frontier hub of the Silk Road. It is born Ottoman and mailed French. The Ottoman fiscal substrate remains active. The Arabic mercantile writing remains central and legible. And yet the French Levant Post accepts the wrapper, carries it onward without erasing that Ottoman administrative body. That is why I resist describing this piece as merely exotic or merely mixed. Its importance is juridical as well as visual. The sheet begins as one thing and is later accepted as another, while both identities remain legible on the same surviving object. That coexistence is what gives the cover its power. One reason I feel comfortable making that claim is that the object has been examined under changing light. Daylight shows overall layout and routing. Ambient light helps us read paper tone and relation of strikes. UV does something else. It separates response in the substrate from response in the inks and adhesives. So this is not just one photo repeated 3 times. It is one object yielding different evidentiary layers. That is why I say the value of the data set is forensic. Different light reveals different kinds of truth. When a frontier object is this dense, imaging is not decoration. Imaging becomes method. This slide goes to the paper's first identity. The Caliphate Type A embossment is not just ornamental flourish. It behaves like the wrapper's original administrative body. The measurements stay within expected Type A cluster. The bead rim behavior supports authenticity rather than later manipulation. And I do not see a persuasive sign of staged over-embossing meant to create a dramatic effect for collectors. So before we ever talk about French postal transmission, the paper already tells us what it was in its first life. That first life survives. French handling does not cancel it out retroactively. The next is sequence, not simply what marks exist, but in what order they landed. My reading is this. The physical paper is first manufactured, embossed, and shipped from the imperial station, Constantinople. A blue Ottoman control mark is then applied. The sheet is used as commercial wrapper and addressed. Only after that do French Levant office accepts, hand stamps, and dates bring it into the postal system. Finally, the Port of Marseille receives it. That sequence matters because credibility in postal history often lies in order more than in spectacle. Marks that merely coexist can mislead. Marks that land in a believable order begin to tell a lawful story. Postal acceptance. This slide addresses a predictable objection. If the HALEP 81, right, right there, strike is French postal evidence, does it erase earlier Ottoman identity? The answer is no. The strike behaves as a front office acceptance and processing mark, not as an obliterating act that voids the prior substrate. The only interference between the postal handling and the earlier physical identity becomes important here. Non-interference. Non-interference. Postal acceptance is active, but it is not destructive. That is exactly why the piece remains a practical screening candidate for the dual citizenship idea. The French office receives the wrapper. It does not annihilate the wrapper's first administrative life. At this point, I step back and ask the audience not to rest the entire case on one single hero mark. The argument converges through 7 layers: physical medium, ink sequence, postal strike, root logic, comparatives, imaging, and narrative fit. The physical medium gives us Ottoman embossed physical substrate. Sequence makes the marks behave credibly. Postal handling gives us French office acceptance. Route logic keeps Marseille inside a believable mercantile path. Comparatives prevent over-isolation. Imaging tests surface behavior. And narrative fit asks whether the wrapper belongs inside a visible merchant stream. No one layer has to do all the work. The force of the case is cumulative. Rarity here compounds across 4 axes. First is configuration, an Ottoman fiscal paper reused as accepted mail. Second is jurisdiction. 2 imperial authorities remain legible on one sheet. Third is documentary rarity. Only a few witnesses of this corridor survive. Fourth is interpretive rarity. The piece appears to define a category of its own. That is why I describe the rarity not as simple scarcity, but as a bucket ladder. Once configuration, jurisdiction, documentary survival, and interpretive significance all stack together, the object rises in a different class of collectability. This slide gives the plain English version. A dual citizenship cover carries 2 active sovereign identities at the same moment, one inherited, one postal. If I say that less formally, I mean the cover is wearing 2 official uniforms at once. Look for a first identity such as physical or judicial substrate, impressed paper, or pre-postal status. Then look for later postal acceptance through office strike, route logic, and credible transit behavior. Finally, look for a second identity that does not destroy the first. That is the test in simple terms, and it is also the search, the hunt, instruction for future finds. Why collectors should hunt? Why does this matter beyond one wrapper? Because if this framework is right, Aleppo 1870 is not only a crown jewel object, it may also define a hunting ground. For collectors like me and you, that means a new lens for overlooked Levant mail, fiscal stationery, and frontier wrappers misdescribed under simpler categories. For institutions, it offers a way to reread mixed postal and fiscal holdings that may have been cataloged separately. For researchers, it provides a census building method for finding other frontier covers. So this is the corridor. This is a summary slide in one sentence. The wrapper is strengthened by corridor, not diluted by it. Seen alone, the Aleppo 1870 is remarkable. Seen in corridor, it becomes even stronger. The other material does not reduce its uniqueness. It gives that uniqueness a believable habitat. And that matters for valuation, for exhibition, for scholarship alike. Singular objects become more persuasive when they can be shown to emerge from a stream rather than from nowhere. This is the 1866 addendum witness. The 1866 Alexandria witness adds another post on the route. Again, I do not treat it as part of his own corpus. I treat it as an outside witness, but it enlarges the senses and adds another Marseille-bound stop to the route. It also preserves the corridor's multilingual, mercantile texture, which is important because it shows continuity between the earlier and later materials. So by the time we place 1866 into the sequence, the corridor no longer feels thin. It begins to read as a surviving sample from a larger, partially lost communication stream. I do not usually read a references slide aloud, but I do want to make one methodological methodolog me- method point here. The source base for part 2 is built on 3 baskets: cancels and office codes, routes and postal context, and the census of market trial. That mix matters. Literature alone can miss market survivals. Market material alone can inflate patterns without context. And cancels without root logic can leave us with disconnected marks. So this slide is here to show that the argument rests on stitched evidence, not on one type of source. This is how the witness census was built. I used 3 channels: published record, market record, present holding. The published record gives topology, rates, cancels, and period anchor. The market record gives survivals, comparisons, and sightings outside formal literature. Present holding gives direct examination, but only for the material actually in my hand. The method is deliberately conservative. The goal is to widen the story without inflating the senses. The blue arc is a good example of how I try to stay disciplined. The literature does show that Ottoman embossed physical papers can carry added control hand stamps in blue ink. It also shows that supplemental clerical marks can appear on physical paper and that blue controls belong broadly to the administrative environment. But the literature does not yet give me a published, exact duplicate of this precise device in this precise relation. So I use the literature to support plausibility, not to claim an exact identification that the record cannot yet sustain. That leads directly to the current finding. My best description for the blue arc today is that it is an unclassified Ottoman clerical or control mark applied before later postal reuse. It fits Ottoman control practice, but I do not yet have the published match. That uncertainty does not weaken the whole case. In some ways, it strengthens the honesty of the presentation because bounded confidence is better than false precision. So the claim here is plausible function, not over certain naming. I close the formal argument with an invitation. If you hold Marseille-bound HAVA material, Arabic-facing Levant mail, embossed physical paper reused postally, or any candidate for dual citizenship cover, I would welcome comparisons against this model. What is most useful are clear front and back images, readings of office marks or dates, and any provenance, auction, or exhibit references that can anchor the object historically. This project grows best by conservative accumulation. The aim is not to force every mixed cover into a new category. The aim is to identify the real corridor, one witness at a time. So I'll end with an updated HAVA Dare family network because HAVA 10 now lets us visualize the corridor in human terms as well as postal terms. Joseph Hava appears at Aleppo. Michael Hava appears at Marseille. Alexandria becomes the visible transfer node between them on the 1864 Witness cover. Around that line sit other Hava and Dar figures whose relationships are promising, but not yet fully proven in civil records. That is why the chart is explicitly provisional. It is a network chart, not a completed genealogy. What Habitat newly makes visible is not a final family tree. It is a stronger, earlier corridor, Aleppo to Alexandria to Marseille, carried by named actors. And that, in turn, reinforces the central argument of the talk. Aleppo 1870 belongs not to isolation, but to a living merchant stream. Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, that was fantastic. I had to turn my mic on. I will actually ask one question that came from the previous presentation that I forgot to record. So I'm glad we got to do this because that was really smooth and great. And that'll be a good piece to have up. And my question would refer back to the cover that had the little ball orb with the religious cross on it. And I know the one gentleman that you were speaking with was making reference that actually the reading in it as well was like Reverend, the title that he was reading in the
Can you see your
Arabic.
screen?
The what?
There's cover
Yeah,
on the
that's
screen?
yeah,
Yes.
correct. Yes, that one.
Yes.
So did you have any confirmation with that or conversation with him yet as confirming whether that was maybe one of these guys was involved in the ministry of some sort?
Well, that is Russian Orthodox symbol,
Right?
and that's what we confirmed.
Okay.
We did
So
not.
that part's confirmed.
Yes, that
Okay.
part is confirmed. That's Russian Orthodox symbol. Those the inscription within the diamond, so to speak, is the confirming mark.
Good deal.
Yep.
And so we're
Yep.
still questioning whether, because I think he said the translation was something of like Reverend Father or something like that.
Yes, which is the definition behind caliphate, right? We have a caliphate embossment on the 1870 Aleppo cover, right? It's
Right.
an embossment. Below that, we have the French Halep 81. That embossment, the caliphate seal, is political, religious, and commercial
Oh, no kidding.
on the frontier of the Silk Road in Aleppo. Yep.
That's super cool. Well, I appreciate this, and this is getting more fun as you go. That's for sure. Because there's a
Oh my
lot of
gosh. The feedback we got, Jerry, is awesome. Let me find this cover arrived after the unrecorded version.
oh, right.
This arrived after, and on here is Russian postal acceptance, French postal acceptance, all in Alexandria into the French steamship packet mail. And
Wow.
what does it is this blue Russian handling,
Yeah.
the French black Russian handling.
Yeah.
On
And then
top
write it
of
in the
that,
alley. Yeah.
here's Joseph Hava in Aleppo going to Mikhail Hava in Marseille.
Oh, that's so
The
good.
genealogy, the connection, the brother-in-law, the family. It's like
That's
you're a
so good.
miniature Rothschild.
Oh, you gotta love it. You
I
got to
do.
love it.
I do.
And that's why these are so important to get out there because there's guys that weren't on the thing that now that they can see this once they get it posted up there
Hey, I
and
got one of those. I'm gonna send it over to Charlie,
right.
right?
So
And they may have other covers that don't fit within the HAVA, but they may have other covers from frontiers such as German colonies, British colonies, uh, on and on,
yeah,
Spanish, Italian, Austrian. Like this is refining double use, right?
yeah, where that's coming from is so yeah, that's so good. I love it, my friend. Well, I appreciate that we got this done. And I will when I hit stop record or stop the end, as soon as it processes, I'll send it to the guys. So it should get up pretty soon.
Roger that. Thank you.
I appreciate you, my friend. Have a great night.
All right, we'll catch up next week.
Sounds good to me. Talk to
All
you.
right. Bye bye.